Good day, you're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Dani Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are today's top stories. Inflation accelerates to its highest since October 2018 to 6.9% in September.
The Bangko Sentral warns the public not to take advantage of the weakening peso, saying this does not help the local currency.
Meralco vows to prevent the termination of its power supply agreements with San Miguel units following the denial of their petition for a temporary rate hike.
And the DTI pegs the number of e-commerce sellers above 2 million. That's far larger than its forecast. Let's begin our broadcast with inflation accelerating to a 45-month high in the month of September. Fresh data from the Philippine Statistics Authority showed that the Consumer Price Index zoomed to 6.9% last month. The agency says this is the highest recorded inflation figure since October of 2018. Now, that September print falls within the Bangko Sentral's forecast of 6.6 to 7.4% for the month. However, this is higher than the 6.7% median estimate yielded by a Businessworld poll of 13 analysts. Now, year-to-date, inflation averaged at 5.1%, breaching the central bank's target of 2 to 4% for 2022. The PSA says the acceleration in the inflation rate was primarily due to faster rise of prices in the food and non-alcoholic beverage indices. Higher increases were also recorded in more than 5 other indices such as housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels, restaurants, and recreation.
The Bangko Sentral warns currency speculators not to take undue advantage of the weakening peso after it slumped to a fresh low of 59 pesos on Monday, October 3rd. In a statement, the BSP urges, quote, those who have the means to not abuse changing market conditions. The BSP says any disruption does not help the peso or even the country. Instead, the central bank encouraged Filipinos to buy dollars from legitimate sources. The BSP says these transactions should be brought into a, quote, an organized and accessible formal market that offers consumer protection, end of quote. The central bank maintains that the peso depreciation is caused by the stronger US dollar, disrupting financial markets around the world. Year to date, the peso has weakened by about 15% from its 51 peso close end of 2021. The currency closed at 58.65 against the greenback on Tuesday, October 4, higher than its record low on October 3rd. With inflation still at elevated levels, its highest at that in years at 6.9%, as well as the BSP's latest statement signaling their readiness to step in. Let's get insights from Dominique Velasquez, Chief Economist over at China Bank. Dominique, thank you for joining us. First, your reaction to that inflation print. You were forecasting 6.8%. Is this the peak, or are things bound to get worse before it gets better? We're seeing 7% on the horizon.
Good morning, Danny. Good morning, Jess. Yes, I think the recent inflation number was more or less aligned with what markets expected. But for us, we think there are still some room for this to increase further. We think it will peak around October by more than 7% due to what was mentioned earlier in your program. Electricity prices might increase in October, and you also have this new round of transport price increases, not just for jeepneys, but now covering buses, taxis, grab cars.
Ma'am, the Fed seems to, at least our expectations for the Fed's tightening seem to have waned down, at least yesterday, and U.S. markets did enjoy a bit of a lift up on the fact that perhaps the tightening won't be as bad as expected, especially with the lower manufacturing print and job rates in the U.S. Does this mean that our peso weakness might, or the peso might be strengthening, at least in the short term?
I think largely the peso has been driven by the dollar increase in the past few months, right? But we do have some structural inflows that we're expecting. We do have remittances coming in this October, November. So hopefully it will prop up the peso. But of course, when you track other currencies, it largely follows now the movement of the dollar.
Okay, but in terms of inflation and this being affected by a weaker peso, are we at least expecting that type of pressure to wane, and it's just the secondary effects, like you mentioned, the lagged effects that we are seeing that might be the case for higher inflation in the near term.
Yes, of course, the peso weakness actually affects inflation more and more now because we have imported inflation, right? So our estimate is the peso depreciated in September by around 3%.
Yeah.
So that added around 0.15 to 0.3 percentage points to your inflation. You have imported products such as fuel. Now we're importing more food, right? We have shortages in some of our food items. So we're importing more and more of that. So it becomes vulnerable to a peso depreciation also.
Now, given that as well, I mean, earlier we were reporting about the BSP statement. What do you make of their assurances here that they are ready to step in, signaling, that especially now that there are more disruptions in the financial markets as the peso continues to weaken?
Well, I think the BSP was actually just making sure that the peso is not being driven by any speculative movements, ensuring that everyone helps in making sure that we have that equilibrium price of the peso and not really because speculators are thinking that it will depreciate more and more. Really looking at what the market price of the peso is.
Does this inflation print warrant an off-cycle rate hike by the Bangko Sentral?
Well, for us, we don't think there's a need for an off-cycle rate hike. The BSP has been quite aggressive already in raising rates. It has actually stemmed some of the depreciation of the peso. If you look at the start of the year to that 56.45 resistance level before, the peso depreciated by 9%. And then you had the off-cycle. And then after that, the peso depreciated around maybe 4%, 4 to 5% only since the off-cycle. So not likely, we think the BSP will still be aggressive in raising rates. But, an off-cycle works when it's a one-time deal, right? So another off-cycle might not be as effective as the previous one.
And does this inflation print in any way, you did mention it was still within the range of the BSP, still expected. Does this change your growth expectations? Will we really be feeling as consumers, because parang we're feeling it na, the pinch, especially towards the end of the year, are consumers going to not be spending during this holiday season because of these expenses?
We will be feeling it. There might be some room to spend still. In October, you have employment figures being which are actually better, right? So you have jobs already.
You have jobs, okay.
But yes, but I think largely you'll also feel it even up to 2023 when people are using up their savings already to making sure that they can buy whatever expenses they want to buy, right? Generally, we think there's a dampening in demand, but not so much to derail some of the growth figures. We think still GDP will be quite decent still, although slower than the first half, right? But still decent for an emerging economy.
Apart from raising rates, do you see now the need for the BSP to actually whip out other tools in its playbook?
Sorry?
Apart from raising rates, do you see the need now for the BSP to actually whip out other tools in its playbook?
Well, for us, we think this is sufficient still. The peso has stabilized a little bit. There's not so much they can do actually anymore. They're using their reserves, so they're using their major tools, right? They're using their reserves, they're using their policy rates. If you look at the comparison across different currencies, they're all tracking the movement of the dollar. So there's very little that can be done. I think part of the statement is really sort of a moral suasion from the BSP to help prop up the peso.
What about supply side? What else can be done by the government, to temper these price increases? There have been already price caps by the DTI. The importing of sugar as well is theoretically supposed to bring down the prices. Other importation of agricultural products. Has that in any way solved or eased the rise in prices?
It can actually ease. We're actually quite happy when we heard that we were going to be importing more sugar because that will be inflationary if you do not plug this short-term shortages, right? I guess for us, first, making sure that you do talk to the industries, anticipating any shortages that might come. So it's not really something that should be late. It should be done beforehand because the industry would actually know if there will be shortages. Second, I guess, although you have that DTI monitoring prices, really more active monitoring. There was news previously that some Noche Buena items were prices of some Noche Buena items were increasing already, right? So really active monitoring to ensure that no one takes advantage of this high inflation environment.
Okay. And then lastly, Dominic, before we let you go, do you see the possibility of the peso hitting that 60 level mark?
We're looking at it. We're looking at the range up to 60 right now. However, we're still hoping that remittances and then structural flows will actually support the peso towards year end. By year end, we think maybe less than 60.
Okay.
All right, so hopefully the weakness has peaked. We are, of course, at an all-time weakest level of peso. Thank you so much. Of course, Dominique Velasquez, Chief Economist over at China Bank.
Thank you.
Now let's pause for a quick break, but coming right up after that. The country's ranking improves in a global index that measures efforts against money laundering and terrorist financing.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel.
Now, Meralco vows to prevent the termination of its power supply deals with companies under San Miguel Corporation. In a statement, Meralco says it would comply with the Energy Regulatory Commission's decision to stand by the PSA and exhaust all efforts to maintain its deals with the companies. This is due to termination notices previously issued by the SMC firms in case the ERC denied their appeal for relief. Meralco says it has entered emergency power fuel. The ERC, however, maintained that the companies must adhere to the PSAs which they had voluntarily entered.
Oo, fixed contract nga ito. Pero nagkaroon po ng change in circumstances, sabi nila. So nag-iba na po yung environment. Wag niyo po kaming itali dun sa fixed price ng contract. So we evaluated, is it really the instance of change in circumstances that are allowed in the PSA? In both instances, the commission, the majority of the commission ruled that it is not among the change in circumstances allowed in the PSA that now triggers a contract.
The country has improved 8 spots in a global anti-money laundering index. The annual Basel Anti-Money Laundering Index, which is based in Switzerland, an economy's risk of money laundering and terrorist financing, as well as their ability to counter these. This year, the Philippines ranked 45th out of 128 countries, an improvement from last year's 37th. The Philippines is deemed at medium-high risk to money laundering and terrorist financing, with an overall score of 5.68 out of 10. The Democratic Republic of Congo is Finland has the least risk.
Now, the number of e-commerce sellers in the country has exceeded the Trade Department's forecasts as it climbs to more than 2 million this year. The DTI says this is attributed to the data gathered from social media platforms and courier services. The department initially projected 750,000 e-commerce participants for 2022. Now, with the unprecedented spread of e-commerce, the DTI raises concerns over issues like unfair pricing and clarity of return policies. The DTI reminds online sellers that they are subject to the same laws as physical stores and businesses.
Tuloy-tuloy po yung pag-monitor natin that these online sellers comply with existing laws. If you recall, yung Consumer Act po natin does not make a distinction between an online seller and one who sells in a physical store. Pareho po yung patakaran yan, pareho yung yung batas. So pareho din po yung treatment natin.
Citing the Government Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center, the Philippine Star reports that the recent deluge of tech scams has claimed millions of dollars from network subscribers in the country. Initial findings of CICC's probe into the tech scams reveal that scammers have stolen millions of dollars from Filipinos who fell victim to their modus operandi. The investigation also confirmed findings of telco giant PLDT that the messaging scams with personalized details came from foreign sources. To strengthen the country's cybersecurity posture, the U.S. Agency for International Development and global security company Palo Alto Networks sealed a partnership deal with the Philippine government. Palo Alto Networks officials said the alliance is expected to boost e-commerce and other digital services in the country by increasing customer confidence.
And Elon Musk revives his original offer to buy Twitter for $44 billion. Musk offers to honor his original bid of $54.20 apiece in an effort to avoid a courtroom fight against the social media platform. Musk earlier signed to acquire Twitter in April but quickly backed out, alleging that Twitter had misled him about the size of its user base. Twitter then filed a lawsuit pushing Musk to go through with the purchase. A trial had been set to begin on October 17th.
Now, keeping track of endorsements and promotions by celebrities as big as Kim Kardashian can be taxing. But it seems the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has kept up with the Kardashian as it imposes a $1.3 million fine over crypto touting. Bloomberg's Scarlett Fu gives us the details in this report.
Kim Kardashian is being made an example of. Wall Street's main regulator punished the reality TV star for not being 100% clear that she was paid to promote a cryptocurrency to her Instagram followers in summer 2021. Kim will pay a fine of $1.25 million, more than 5 times what she was paid by Ethereum Max to plug Emax tokens. She's also agreed not to promote for pay any crypto asset for the next 3 years. The Securities and Exchange Commission went big with its enforcement, announcing it first thing Monday morning before the market opened with a fancy YouTube video to go along with it. Kim's not the first celebrity to get fined for her lack of disclosure. The SEC went after boxer Floyd Mayweather and DJ Khaled in 2018. Analysts say this was SEC Commissioner Gary Gensler's way of sending a message to other influencers. You need to follow securities law and make it clear that you're getting paid to sell something. He's also giving notice to the crypto world at large. It's time to come in and register as a broker or exchange with us. And if you don't, be prepared to face enforcement. The crypto world is resisting. They argue that the old rules don't work well for something decentralized like crypto. And if anything, digital assets should be classified as commodities, which conveniently enough aren't covered by the SEC's strict investor protection rules.
Even with that $1.3 million fine, most of us still
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
keep up with
Drop
Kim.
in the bucket for her then, Jess.
Those are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate front today. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. We are One News, all sides, all the time. But don't go away, we'll give you the latest on the local bourse when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And we're still watching Business World Live here on One News. Now, Dan, let's have a quick check here on the peso, especially since the BSP is saying that they have the tools to actually intervene, but stop short of saying that they will actually make use of those tools.
Exactly. So perhaps for now, not needed, at least for today. And if we listen to Dominique Velasquez, she does believe that the peso might stay put above or below even 60. And that does seem to be the case. You can see us treading back to 58 levels here, 58.69 to the greenback. So still, of course, weak, but nevertheless quite, an improvement from the 59 levels that we were seeing. And this, of course, is seems to be the case as well yesterday and what was bringing the markets forward. Because if you can take a look, Jess, at how our index is doing, it's not too bad. We're back above 6,000 levels. And if you had invested your money in the index on Monday, by now you would have earned 4.6%. But in at least 3 days, the problem is that, of course, the inflation print is around 7%. So, the real gains might not be there. But nevertheless, we were among the best in Asia yesterday after, of course, 13% losses in the back of on the back of September's very, very difficult month there. And just, this is on the back of a rally in Asian stocks as well, following the rally that we've seen in U.S. stocks yesterday.
Now, following that as well, you have cement players now being all the rage, especially given all these developments in terms of infrastructure projects. Tell us more.
Exactly. Well, do you want the subway project to cause you traffic over in Meralco Avenue? But at least for the property players, for instance, that have been around there, they did have quite a rally during that groundbreaking. And of course, we will be needing way more cement to fund this. And you can see SMC, or at least today, it's going back a touch. But yesterday, quite some cement players jumping Holcim up by 7.2%. And then in terms of DMCI, 3.1%. Mega Wide, 17% jump. Yesterday, it bagged 2 stations in terms of contracts. And of course, in the news is Eagle Cement, because San Miguel has said that they will be buying 88.5% of Eagle Cement at 22 pesos per share. Now, the interesting part here is that the price was 15.4. Yesterday, it is currently at a trading halt right now, but nevertheless was up already 3.4%. Bloomberg says that the pre-open price today will be around 18 pesos and 15 centavos. So still a bump up from yesterday, but nevertheless lower than the 22 pesos. Recall that, of course, San Miguel President Ramon Ang has the major stake of Eagle Cement, which will now be bought by San Miguel.
Okay, something to keep tabs on. At the same time, not only are we going to need more cement for those projects, we're going to need more patience. That's it for
or
today.
Stay home na lang.
October 5th, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for your free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Stay safe, Philippines. We are One News, all sides, all the time.